Disruptors. We are going to spend the next hour drilling about disruption, disruptors, how they have done it, what is the feeling, what they get in return, etc. First I would like to call Mitchel Baker, the power behind Mozilla. Mitchel. I would like to call Nildas Zennström, who disrupted the telco industry, and I would like to call Jimbo Ways, who disrupted the knowledge industry. So please welcome Mitchel, Nildas. It seems that I have to continue from the podium because there is a seat. Okay. First, I would like to ask Mitchel, Nildas, and Jimmy that you will tell us each in a couple of minutes what actually you have done, whom you disrupted, and what you have done before you started to go and kill whole industries. And did you know what you are doing, or it just happened to you? Nildas, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, first of all, when you talk about disruption, it's not so much about what you destroy and what you make difficult. It's about creating new opportunities and seizing changes in a landscape. It can be technological changes, it could be market changes, regulatory changes, it could be changes in how consumers or the market are reacting to things, and doing something much more efficient, and therefore taking leapfrog in the way you do things. So that's what it's all about, to do something in a completely different way. Obviously what happens then is that the incumbent players are usually struggling to deal with those changes because they have a big machinery, maybe thousands of people working in one way, the old way, and usually it becomes very difficult for them. And that's something, my background was, before I was an entrepreneur back in a long time ago, in the 90s, I was working for a telecom company. I just realized that was very challenging to compete when you had exactly the same products as everyone else. You can have a bit better advertisement campaigns and try to have a bit smarter price plans. And what I realized was that if you could use a different type of technology, you can get a competitive advantage. And that's what it's all about.
By the way, anybody in the crowd doesn't know what Nildas has done? How many companies did you ruin, Nildas?
The reality is, funny thing, so if you look at Skype, which is now actually the largest provider of international phone calls, so you would think that companies like BT and Deutsche Telekom and Rock Telecom and so forth would be struggling with. But the reality is that the number of international calls has actually increased for a very long time, and it hasn't really changed since Skype and others started to do voice over IP calls. So what happens when you have these kind of things, it stimulates the market. Obviously what happened is that prices, the incumbents' price plans have changed quite a lot. Obviously come down significantly. So I'm not really aware of any fixed telephone company that has gone out of business because of Skype actually.
Who in the audience liked the idea that Skype was able to drive down the price of international phone calls from dollars to cents? Raise your hand. JP, where are you sitting? We will invite you in a few minutes to tell us the party line of the telcos. Who doesn't like the idea that Nildas was able to push the price of international calls from dollars to cents? So you have a lot of fans here. So how about a round of applause for Nildas? Mitchel, can you tell us a little bit about from where you came, how you arrived to Mozilla, how you drove Mozilla, and what Mozilla is doing to the incumbent players in this pretty new industry?
We're a little different, and we set out very consciously to disrupt a monopoly. And so that's a little bit different, but it was clear that it needed to happen. So your first question was, did we intend to do that? And absolutely. And we still intend to continue disruption. In our case, not based so much on cost, because now we've moved into a phase where everything is free of charge to consumers. So for Mozilla and Firefox, the key to disruption is the control point. So our original disruption of the first monopoly was to actually build an industry and to crack the control point open to get to the stage that Nicholas described of creating value. And what else did you want to know?
I would like to know what you have done before you became a disruptor.
Well, I'd say it was building the database of knowledge to actually be a disruptor. I have a belief that creative thought, truly creative thought, is built on some pretty hard work and diligence and sort of a database of information and knowledge and vision and clarity. And that until you have that, great ideas don't go so far. But did you mean personally?
Yeah, personally, if you don't mind.
I grew up in a small family business of classic American entrepreneurship before venture capital. You know, the family funds put into the business. It's a pewter foundry. So it's work with your hands, three-dimensional craft, very low leverage, very high labor cost, not digital at all. But it was absolutely entrepreneurial, and it was, how do you make things work? And a family business is exactly like a startup. It doesn't matter what needs to be done or whether you know how to do it or anything. It's just you find a way to get stuff done and to grow. So I think that was probably pretty fundamental, because clearly when we set out, especially disrupting a monopoly, it's not possible. So you have to have the sense that, you know, I'm going to do this, and I can see a way even if no one else has.
For those who don't know what Mozilla is doing, can you tell them in one sentence what actually you are doing?
Yeah. We are building a slice of the internet where the only agenda is individual control of our online experience. Browser is a first step, probably identity, something to do with data. What is the sense of me? Where is the home of me in this giant, large-scale automated internet?
Okay, thank you, Mitchel. And now, Jimmy, you really have done something. You really have done something very ugly. You know, when I was a kid, which was many, many years ago, I used to lay on the floor, because we didn't have air conditioning in hot summer, and browse through old volumes of encyclopedias. And due to this wonderful industry, which existed for the last 300 years, 400 years, and it's kind of disappeared. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
I would.
Is my mic on? Yes, it's terrible. I'm a very bad man.
Did you plan it? Did you know that it will reach this kind of disruptive power?
Well, so what I think is actually interesting about Wikipedia is that, you know, if we think about disrupting an industry, right? So we're talking about, you know, Mozilla fighting I suppose, monopoly. I suppose we're thinking of Microsoft, right? And that's sort of big. People were very concerned about Microsoft, a very, very big company, a very big industry. The telecoms industry, huge industry. The encyclopedia industry is an industry pretty small, right? It's not a really, really big industry. But what's interesting about Wikipedia is that encyclopedias still very much loom very large culturally. And we all have memories of encyclopedias. They've been a part of culture for a very long time. But now what Wikipedia is doing is something very different in many ways from a traditional encyclopedia. Even, you know, if you go back to 40, 50 years ago, you know, how many people here have used Wikipedia in the last 5 days. Okay. I think 40 or 50
Go and work. You don't have enough things to do that you go to Wikipedia all the time.
40 or 50 years ago, if if I were the head of Britannica sitting here, or Brockhaus, and I said, how many of you have used your encyclopedia in the past 5 days? Not so much, right? It was there as a reference source. It was not integrated into our lives in the way that the internet has become integrated into our lives. So that my daughter, who is 9 years old, she also lays on the floor with her laptop and pages through Wikipedia. She misses the physical sensation of the book, but in terms of the experience, all the world's knowledge is right there available at her fingertips, and at all of our fingertips in a way that it never was before. So it's really, for me, the disruption, it's not about disrupting that old industry, it's about, we've really created a whole new kind of thing.
Sure.
When I think of Wikipedia, what I think you've disrupted is not the encyclopedic industry, but the sense of experts, and expertise and highly curated knowledge always being the source of authority.
Mitchel, how many users do you have now on Mozilla?
350 million, more or less. It changes each day, but that's about the number.
350 million a month?
That's about exactly the same number that we have.
350.
It's probably the same 350.
Niklas? How many users, Niklas?
I think Skype is over 500 million registered users.
350, half a billion. It's quite amazing. Now the more amazing thing is how many people are working as employees in Mozilla?
Worldwide, about 250.
250 people. In Skype? How many people work in Skype, employees?
It's a bit more than 600.
600?
We have about 30.
30 people get... how do you do it?
I'm a really fast typist. In our case, the way we do it is that the actual production of the encyclopedia is done by the community. And that doesn't mean every random person on the planet, can contribute, people do contribute. But there's a core community of probably 1,000 to 3,000, depending on how you count them, who are there caring for things every day, discussing policies, thinking about quality issues, all those kinds of things. And then the staff at the Wikimedia Foundation, their job is to basically keep the servers running. And there's other things, handling legal and communications and things like that. But the actual production of the encyclopedia, there's one person on staff who might occasionally, as a part of his job, edit the encyclopedia. But that's it. Everybody else, if they're editing, it's because they're at home or they're doing, like many people, they edit from work where they're not supposed to be doing that.
Niklas, how your product is being distributed?
Well, I don't think it's kind of important. I think what's important is that if you have a business which are online, which basically we're talking about here, is that borders really don't matter anymore. So I think it's very much having a mindset that the market is worldwide, and you don't really need to care so much about where your users are. I remember when we launched Skype, just like the first few days, you're trying to track where users were. We had some people in Poland, some people in Germany, and then we come to Netherlands, and it was like a matter of days, and then you just spread like wildfire. And then we discovered that everyone in Poland was using Skype, and we had never gone there, and then we discovered tons of people in Brazil was using the service. So what we did though was that we enabled users to translate the software. I think very much similar way to something like both Wikipedia and Mozilla, where the community can use to translate the services. So I think it doesn't really matter so much in terms of if your organization is distributed or centralized. There are pros and cons with both, but I think the mindset that the service is, this is your software that lives on the net, and that's why you don't really need to have that many people use to provide a basic service.
Mitchel?
Well, long ago, before Firefox, we started out with the model that Jimmy described, with the idea that Mozilla employees would be coordinators, but not actual producers of the goods. And over time, we've evolved a more hybrid model. So we actually do produce part of Firefox through our employees, but not all of it. And so we have the same leverage model where each employee is a scaffolding or a seed for a community of other people who together do the work. We found with the software and the number of hours a week it takes to actually be competitive that we need employees as the seed of the production as well. And also an enormous amount of user engagement and creation in the product. And also the key part of success has been the user engagement, the people who are involved have enough sense of ownership, to actually go do things on their own. And that's just how we get distribution.
Thank you. JP, can you introduce yourself and your role?
I think I've just been disrupted by your saying. I'm JP Ramaswamy, I'm Chief Scientist of BT. And
JP, what do you think about what Niklas is doing to you guys?
well, truth confession time, I entered telecoms because I had dinner with Niklas about 6 years ago. And I heard what he was trying to do while I was at an investment bank, and I decided I was going to find a telco that would let me do that. So I'm all for what you're doing. I'm delighted to be in a place where I can do it. And all I will say is, Yossi, watch that space.
And I will ask you two questions. Don't go away. We didn't embarrass you enough.
Talk about being put on the spot.
Do you see the industry following Niklas, or do you see yourself working for Niklas in a few years?
I think those parts of the industry that don't follow what Niklas is doing will either find themselves out of a job or working for him. I mean, we were talking, we actually flew together from London, and we were talking about the codecs used for high-definition voice. And as an outsider to the industry, I found it shocking that nothing had changed for 70 years, and that kind of complacency could take place about the quality of voice. And that's what monopolies do. So when you take that away, suddenly people start waking up. But people at Skype didn't care about it, and those were the kind of characteristics about what Niklas and Jans were doing that fascinated me, to say, if you walk in from the outside, which of the sacred cows aren't even cows? And coming from India, I know something about sacred cows. Right? And that wasn't he then Skyped into a session in Supernova a little after we met. And I just heard the story and said, okay, I know what I'm doing next. I know what I'm doing next after this, by the way, and it's about education, but it ties up with what all three guys are doing.
Thank you. So we will define you as a reborn telco person. Reborn again telco person.
I guess so, if such people can ever be reborn.
Okay, thank you, JP. Now let's look into the audience a little bit. We saw in the last 15 years the music industry being disrupted, the video industry being disrupted, the newspaper industry being disrupted, the book industry being disrupted, the telco industry being disrupted, and some of the disrupting people have been disrupted as well. We see now a new second round of disruptions. Who in the audience feel that they belong to the disruptors community? Who belong to the disrupting community? Who belong to the disrupted community? So I would say like this, about 3% are disruptors, 2% are disrupted, and 95% don't understand my accent. Retaliation. what did the three of you felt from the industry in the early days when you began to stick your head out of the sand? Mitchel?
Well, no one paid any attention to us, so we were ignored for a long time, actually. We just kept going. So probably not the best answer, but we're seeing a lot more response now. So what we're seeing now in particular is policy responses that are affecting not the browser so much, but the internet, the digital structure per se. So in particular, we see with music and the film industries, the response of really retaliation against their own user base, with 3 strikes for downloading. But on a structural level, the increase in laws that make it difficult to run an open network. So if you have a shared network that's not logged, you suddenly become liable for anything that gets downloaded, whether it's legal or not. And this is a response to disruption of the policy response. And if you think, if we said to a municipality, if you build a road, you have to guarantee nothing illegal happens on it. But that's what's happening on the internet now. And so that's the kind of regulatory disruption that is going to have some long-term consequences. So we're actually eager in the Mozilla Firefox world to find business models or to not destroy business models. Certainly, maybe all the advertising money goes to Google, but it gets parceled out to other agencies and other organizations, and so we try very hard not to be disruptive.
Nicholas, what is the reaction you've received from the industry in the early days of disruption?
The usual, like the different steps. Initially, there's everyone in the incumbents kind of ignore what you're doing and you dismiss it and it won't work. It's not serious, it's toy. Then you start having a bit of traction. Then they start saying, well, maybe this is not according to the regulation, or it should be banned one way or the other. Although those arguments kind of fell quite flat with regards to telecom, different situation with media. And then what you start to see, that the ones which are the incumbents, which are the underdogs, start to say, okay, there's something happening in the market. How can I, as a company, take advantage of this and actually create an advantage for myself? And then you have the number one players who tend to forever kind of dismiss and completely ignore what you're doing. So what we saw was that there were some operators who were very early on to want to work with Skype, and then following that there were some mobile operators who were also quite willing to work with Skype as well, also some handset manufacturers. And but there were also some others who didn't want to touch us. But I think that's kind of, and as more established the company becomes, then you see less and less of those things.
You mean?
Well, I think for us it was like in the case of Mozilla, nobody noticed us for quite a long time. I remember when I first had the idea for Wikipedia and first started it. I was in a complete panic to hurry up and do it because I thought it was so obvious that everyone would be doing the same thing. Of course, nobody noticed for years, which was good. But then eventually, when Britannica did notice us, when we were about 20 times their traffic, they just said mean things about us in the press. Didn't help them very much. So we haven't. I think it's because it was a small industry. They didn't really have the resources to really put together a huge media push or to try to ban us or anything like that. It's Britannica. They don't have that much money.
Do you wake up in the middle of the night covered with cold sweat, fearing that your business will be disrupted?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and sometimes it's fear and sometimes it's hope. Right? I mean, the browser, the way we access the internet now is ancient. It's a decade old. It needs to change. It's time to change. We had a little stagnation period due to monopoly, and then partly we've cracked that now. We have competition in this little zone, but we need something different, and the browser of today is not all it should be. So when I wake up, I guess this is the face-to-face discussion you mentioned, but sometimes it's really exciting, and sometimes, yes, absolutely. There should be something that disrupts what we're doing, and soon, I hope. I just want to be close enough to it.
Can't you, will it be true or not to call Facebook a social browser, which is actually disrupting part of what you are offering?
I think of Facebook as part application, part platform, but not a social browser. I think that the Facebook is a social application where we interact with our friends, but that is also potentially a building block for a bunch of services which might become web-wide, and then it's a platform which will disrupt other things, but not the browser in particular. I would say Facebook is a potential disruptor for how each one of us actually accesses the internet. Who am I? Where's my identity? What's my entry point?
And you're thinking about these issues, as you said a few minutes ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I want at least an option where all of those things are under kind of my control and across web. That's not at all an anti-Facebook play. I mean, Facebook is a great thing and lots of people will use it for many
It's a pro-Mozilla, not anti-Facebook.
Yes.
Okay. Nildas.
Well, I think that every business which has traction and has some kind of success always run the risk of being disrupted by something, and you really don't know who it's going to be, because that's kind of the nature of disruptive businesses. Years happens, and it comes usually from a corner you didn't really know. So I think that just have to be the mindset of every business which have success, that you have to continuously focus on improving your services and not become complacent, which is so easy to become when you have a large market share in a sector. So I think companies are always focused on innovation and customer experience, and also not being afraid of disrupting themselves, or are in okay shape. But you have to be paranoid.
Jimmy, are you paranoid?
No, I'm not paranoid at all. I just had a great idea. You sold Skype to eBay, which was kind of an odd combination that ultimately now is broken apart. Facebook should buy Skype. That's a nice mix. Give me a percent when you do that. Had the idea. Brilliant. No, so I don't have any real concerns about being disrupted at the current time. One of the things that's different about what we're doing, the browser market is incredibly lucrative, and so there's a lot of people who would really like to be there. Telecom, obviously very lucrative. Wikipedia is a very, very, very bad business. Everything is free. Everything is freely licensed.
Don't go into this business. It's
it's really hard to compete with us, and not really. It's not a target that people say, "Oh, I want to compete with Wikipedia." It
doesn't make sense. Go and compete with Mozilla. Much better.
So why don't you put advertising on Wikipedia?
Why don't we have advertising on Wikipedia? I'll steal a line from Craig of Craigslist. Customers haven't asked us to yet. We're a nonprofit organization, so it is an open question, obviously. I'm opposed to it, our board's opposed to it, but I always say we have to continuously make that decision in a thoughtful way, because we are a charity. We don't need the money to keep doing what we are doing, but we could get a huge amount of money to fulfill our charitable mission. So it's an interesting question. It's not something that we're considering.
Now, each one of you have between 350 million and 500 million happy unpaid customers. To Skype they pay sometimes some pennies. So it's very easy to be disruptor. You just have to mount 300 million users, and the rest is following. Last year we had here a panel which was called the first 100 million users are always the toughest. And in 2 sentences, what will be your advice to the people here how to mount 100 million users?
Stay out of software. first of all, go to websites and services would be mine.
I think for me, it's having a very pure, simple vision that everybody can understand immediately. When people, even the very early days when people saw Wikipedia, they knew exactly what it was supposed to be. They knew exactly what they were supposed to do, and it made it easy for them to tell other people about it. I see a lot of businesses with a lot of buzzwords, and you go to their website and you click through 4 pages before you even figure out what the hell it is they do. I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of people make.
I think first of all, don't do a copycat of someone else, because it's going to be difficult to be successful. And I agree with Jim. You do something which is simple proposition and something that's easy to understand, and also things that actually makes an impact for if it's obviously we're talking about consumers, so things that has an impact on people's lives and actually make their lives easier, or they can save money, or so it has a real benefit. But the other thing which is not so easy is actually, which always is a key factor, is timing. And timing, to get the timing right is super important to be successful and to take off and get that nice hockey stick growth. But timing is something that you don't really control, and you can sit afterwards and say it was good timing, but actually when you're in the middle of it, you're not so sure if you're good at timing or not. So, so sometimes timing is also a bit of being lucky with the timing, but that's a key ingredient.
Guy Rowling, in time that circulation of newspapers is going down, you were able to increase the circulation of newspaper, or at least this is what you are telling us. How were you able to do it?
We innovated the product. We came out with a print product that was based on a brand that was founded in the internet, and we came with something that was not available at that time. Our competitors didn't have it. So you can still innovate in old media and innovate in ways that haven't been done by our competitors. Our print circulation went up 35% in the last 4 years, paying subscribers in our print newspaper. And we based it on a brand that we founded on the internet 10 years ago.
So online journalism is only temporary, you would say?
No, online journalism is the future, no doubt. But sometimes until the future comes, you have to make sure that you know how to make money until the landscape really changes the whole way.
Okay, can you pass the microphone to Joe Schoendorf? Joe, you were there in the beginning almost. You've seen there, you've been there. How do you see the whole disruption cycle? Where it will lead us?
You come here to a place like this, and then I've just had an opportunity to spend a few weeks in what I'll call the traditional economy. And more you get the feeling that they're parallel universes. You pick up the newspaper and we all read about General Motors and name the Fortune 50 companies. And then you come to a place like this and you feel the energy. I'm not sure, Yossi, and you and I have been at this, Moses is what I should really call you, but I'm not sure I've seen more disruption on a serious basis. I was fortunate enough to come to Silicon Valley in '66, and that was about 2 years ago.
And you were 3 years old?
2. But you look at what's going on right now just in the Valley, and we used to have 2 or 3 streams of disruption. And now we probably have a dozen. Next year, you're all going to have an opportunity to, what did inventors spend $1 billion decoding the human genome? And next year we'll be able to get it done individually for under 1,000, our genome. And you look at what's going on in the whole green area, and you look, you just name 10 areas where there are really exciting, Jimmy, I agree with you completely, simple. This is different, but everybody can understand it. So I feel more confident than I ever have about the industries that we've all created in this room, genuinely.
Now I would like everybody to think in his own mind what is going to be the next disruption. In which area it will be? Think in your mind. When you have an idea, raise your hand. If you think about some industry which is going to be disrupted, the TV, the journal, guys, you don't think. Do you have one industry in your mind, just a minute, that you think there will be disruption? Raise your hand, raise your hand. Who else have a thought? Who else have a thought? You cannot think about what industry will be disrupted. Okay, now at the count of 3, scream as loud as you can. What do you think will be disrupted? 1, 2, 3. I heard education. Again, 1, 2, 3. Energy. 1, 2, 3. Okay. In 60 years, when you will have your grandchildren on your lap and tell them the history of the web, you will be able to tell them, I was in Munich and I saw in my own eyes 3 great disruptors, Jimmy Wales, Nildas, and Mitchel. Thank you very much.